Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Paratalk. And on this episode of Paratalk, I am once again joined by my good friend Rob of Dead Air. It's not Dead Air Radio anymore, it's just Dead Air. But he's done a lot of investigations, and he's been very, very, very busy recently. We're going to talk about some of his investigations, but without further ado, I think you heard him just then, but let's properly bring him in. All right, Rob?
This is the third time now, so it kind of feels regular to be on.
You're a regular. You're now a Paratalk paranormal regular. There you go.
Exactly, and just before Halloween as well, so that's like a prime slot to be on as well.
A prime slot, yeah. Everybody's clamouring to get on Paratalk, apparently, in my head. But you've been quite busy, haven't you? I mean, I've been watching your videos. I've been watching them, and you've sort of you've been a bit all over the place, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still quite behind with videos, so things that you're seeing was recorded quite a while back. So finally getting through them and releasing them. But I've been very busy doing a lot of video editing. That's the hardest part of it. Obviously, going out and doing the investigations, the fun part. Coming back with hours and hours of video to sit there and edit and do all that is the hard part, but that's the fun bit, really. So it's getting it all out there. So I think when we last spoke, when was it? It was earlier in the year.
Yeah, it was a while ago, little while ago.
Yeah, so putting a few out now. So and the build up to Halloween as well. So got plenty to get through, and obviously beyond that as well.
So before I delve in and start picking your brains about some of your investigations, I was going to say, you mentioned one thing that I was going to ask, and when you go out and you film all this footage and you get home, you've literally got to sit through all of that footage and then decide what you're going to use and what you're not going to use. How long does that normally take you?
Well, it used to be, I used to aim for shorter videos when I first started. So if you go back to the earlier stuff, when I was just getting into the whole video editing, videos were under 45 minutes, maybe maximum 45 minutes. Now I'm kind of like, if it's getting towards an hour, I'm starting to think, got to trim it a little bit. And then you're going back through it, and you've got to make that sort of editorial decision of how much do you take out? Because I know a lot of TV shows will film scenes where they switch between cameras, and that allows them to do easy edits. But I'm filming on one camera, so I can't just keep chopping bits out here and there, everywhere. So it's got to be sort of within context. So one of the things I'm always conscious about is if I take something, for example, there's a long bit of silence during a vigil.
Yeah.
If I start taking chunks of it out, people could see the cut and they'll say, well, there's bits missing there. Why has he edited that bit out? Why has he gone from there? So I always think, especially when something's happening or you think you're getting a bit of activity. So I try to keep that as a long piece so that there's no seamless cuts. So, for example, if I hear a bang, I won't just cut to when I go upstairs and investigate the bang. I would have to show the full however many minutes long so people can then see. You couldn't get away with this on TV, but this is the power of YouTube, that you can just leave these long edits in and then people can see, well, yeah, there's nobody hiding in that cupboard or there's nobody else up there. Otherwise you would have seen it. Whereas on TV, they would just cut and chop and change camera angles and things like that. But this is the power. You kind of get a little bit more to be able to leave stuff like that in when you're independent and you're doing YouTube stuff. But I like to try and keep as much in as possible so it's authentic. When I'm starting to, if you see like a lone vigil and it's chop, 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 and I'm switching between rooms quickly, in my head it kind of feels like I'm leaving a lot out. I kind of want the viewer to experience what it's like to be doing a full vigil as best as possible, but obviously mindful of not going too long on a video, because I don't want the videos to be too long that people would just lose interest.
Yeah, I think that's there's a key aspect there of finding what works and how long you can go for, and also what you leave in and what you take out, because obviously it's difficult when you have something, if you capture something on film, you think, well, how much do I enhance this? How much do I up the levels? How much do I try and get the sound of whatever I think I heard out so that viewers can, see it or hear it or whatever, without people saying, well, I think you tampered with that. And so it must be a quite kind of a fine balance when you're trying to present something in a way that someone can easily understand what they're hearing or seeing, but also not to sort of ruin the whole, evidence, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like to keep the camera forward. I mean, I'll always start off talking to the camera, but then I like to have the investigation. A lot of people will just turn with the camera and sit with it facing them, so it's looking at their face. But I kind of want it to be the other way, so that people are getting that kind of, it's like that point of view kind of look, where it's almost as if they're in the room and the camera is what they would see. Obviously, you're in the dark, so you look at the night vision, but it's like when you're walking around and just exploring a place, it's always like camera first, so it's kind of like first person. That's the kind of style I wanted to create with this from the start. So that's why you'll never see me in a room where I'm got the camera pointing on my face, unless I'm doing a piece to camera or something like that. But I always try and have it as authentic as if I'm bringing other people in there with me. So it's like you're part of the vigil, you're listening as well as me, you're looking out for things as well as me.
I've noticed some investigators now are doing the GoPro on the chest sort of thing, on the head. So wherever they go, wherever they look, they're capturing everything on film, which I think is quite a good idea, as long as you remember you've got something strapped on you and you changing the batteries or changing the SD card or whatever. But I think it's quite a good idea. I think it's quite a good idea doing stuff like that. I think that anything that can draw the viewer in even more is a good thing. Rather than just aimlessly swinging a camera around in complete darkness and running around and going, oh, did you see that? Oh, it was in there or whatever. And the viewers are going, what's going on? What's happening? It's just noise. So yeah, I think that's a pretty sort of a cool sort of innovation to, get people involved in a visual sense. But anyway, before we prattle on for another hour about, all that stuff, I wanted to ask you some questions, and because I've been watching your videos, and I've been taking notes, and you touch on one of your videos. When I saw it, I thought, yes, I need to watch this. I need to watch this video, and it's the video that you do an investigation in a. I would say now it's an abandoned, if it's still around, an abandoned shopping centre. Here we go. See. Is it a shopping mall or is it a shopping centre? I would say a shopping centre, but it's very American to say shopping mall. But we do have shopping malls, because shopping malls became a thing in the sort of late 80s when we started getting McDonald's and things became a little more Americanized. And as a teenager, I remember going to the shopping mall because, believe it or not, we've got a shopping mall down here. It's only a little place and there's only about 20, maybe 30 shops in it, but they're all small shops, but it's still a shopping mall. And we had a larger one in the town, the city near me, the city of Bristol. They had one, and it was a much, much larger one. And as we were saying before this episode, you can go into those places and literally get lost and spend all day in there. You can eat your dinner, you can have a drink, and before you can even go into the pictures. You can even go to the pictures in there, and you can do everything. You can do everything you want. Some of them have got arcades. Not so much now, obviously, but a kind of sad thing that shopping malls and shopping centres have kind of died off a bit. I mean, we've got a large building in the town where I live, which is an old department store. I mean, you remember those, don't you, from the old days, department stores? And it's been closed for years. It's been closed for like 20 years. And it's a huge building, 3 floors. Used to be an old co-op. And they had clothes in there. They had homeware section. They had an electrical section. I remember going in there as a kid and just walking around the electrical section and looking at the hi-fis and looking at the TVs and the video players and thinking, this is like a wonderland for me. And the building's still there, and I'd love to go in there and wander around. Not necessarily because there's any ghosts, but because of nostalgia. And I think that when you did that shopping centre video, it was very nostalgic to see you wandering around. What was it like to be in there and just sort of? I know there were a few other people there, but it was a very small amount of people there. What was that like to do that?
It was. I mean, I've been in shopping centres after closing time before, because the newest shopping centre to me, the Metro Centre, that's got a cinema which stays open till late. So there's a lot of times you come out of that cinema and every other shop has just got the shutters down, but you've still got to walk through at night. So I've kind of been in that position before, but it was strange because I was aware of the stories of this place. So I know every shopping centre might have their own stories, but
what were the stories? Let's just look at the story. What were the stories? Just to let the viewers know, what were some of the main stories of that shopping mall?
Well, the whole idea of it, the theme of the whole show was the fact that the shopping centre was built on the site of a castle, Stockton Castle, which was pretty much exactly where the floor print of the current shopping centre is. But the thing is that I wanted to play on with, a lot of people in Stockton, which is a small town in Teesside, didn't know that it was a castle there. Even though it's on the crest of their football club, even though the shopping centre is called Castle Gate, a lot of people had no idea there was a castle there. So there's stories of all sorts there. There's the bishops of Durham used to live there, and of course people sheltered there during the plague. It's been sieged by the Scots. So this thing's got a lot of history to it. In terms of things that people experience in modern times, it was mainly security guards that would talk about things. Apparently there was a child that was seen in the shopping mall when they would go and have a look for the child, thinking it was a real human being. They would find nobody, and yet this was on the upper floors where there's no way that anyone could get in or out. Staff would say that they would experience things in the shop, presumably poltergeist activity. There was a boots shop in there, which unfortunately I couldn't get access to, but that shop was on the exact spot where, I don't know if I didn't mention this in the video, didn't make the final cut, but the first ever match, a match you would strike and light a flame with, that was invented on this site, and the man who invented the match is still said to haunt where his shop used to be, an old chemist. But in terms of the lower parts, when you go right underneath the shopping centre, there's a lot of dark corridors, and you're talking about underneath where the foundations of the castle would have been, and that's where a lot of people see things, shadow figures. I was able to, I used a thermal imaging camera. I got something that moved on the thermal imaging camera. I still think about that now, and obviously regret that I can't go back and do that again. But that was a strange experience for me. Even in the top part of the shopping center, in the normal mall, where thousands of people will walk every day, at night I heard a noise to me in real life, it sounded like a bang, like someone banging on the shutter, even though there was nobody up there. But when I watched the video back, it sounded like something hit in the floor, which was a different sound altogether. So I don't know what that was. It sounded like an object had landed on the floor when I watched it back, but there was nothing on the floor. But when I was there at the time, that was not what was in my mind. I was thinking there was someone hitting the inside of one of the store shutters, even though there was nobody in there. So that was weird.
How do you kind of focus if you're in a building, okay, and you're in an area where you're pretty much on your own, and a place like that is, there's all the little walkways and hallways and doorways that you can go in. How do you focus your mind to just only be focused on what you're doing and not thinking about other stuff? Does that come with time? I mean, was there a time where you would go, what was your first video like where you thought, I'm going to make a video, I'm going to this place, allegedly it's haunted? Was that difficult? Was that something you had to learn?
I remember the first investigation I ever did that wasn't as part of a group. Because when you're with a group and you're with 20 other people, it's a different thing altogether. But when I remember it was about 2009, we did a thing for student radio, and we had access to an old university building that was called the Bonded Warehouse. It used to be an old warehouse on the quayside in Sunderland. It's now well, it became a bar. Now it's a modern computer IT building now. But I remember we went in there, and it was only 2 floors, so we were just based downstairs, asking each other to go up and spend some time upstairs alone. And I can remember that my heart was like pounding in my chest, just with the nerves of doing it. And I think back to that now, that was one of the lesser places I've ever been. And yeah, I think time does help. When you do it a lot, you kind of just get used to it. I can't remember the last time that I was properly, I'd say, on edge. I've been times where my heart's gone when something's happened, and I don't know whether you do that thing where you stop and you listen for a while, and you can literally hear your own heart going.
Yeah.
But you're not frightened. You're not frightened where you want to get out. You're in a different type of. You're excited because you think something's about to happen and I'm going to witness it.
Yeah, super alert.
But
yeah,
you literally feel you're super heightened. But another thing I've noticed, I think this is maybe subconsciously I do it, is that I convince myself there's no such thing as ghosts. I know that sounds easy to do, but I'm sort of like, I did start off doing it very skeptically. So now I'll switch into that skeptic mode, and I'll try and approach everything like a complete skeptic, where I'm thinking, you're not going to see Casper going through that wall. That's not going to happen. And you convince yourself nothing's going to happen to you when you're in there. You're not going to see anything. Nothing's going to jump out at you. I think if I thought there was someone else in that building that was invisible, I couldn't see them, and it was a ghost, I wouldn't go in there. But you convince yourself there's not, and then you go in there. I think that's the way I do it.
Well, you had a little bit of a scare when you were in the lower parts of the shopping centre, shopping mall, whatever you want to call it. When you were walking through they were like, I think that you could call them small independent stores or shops with shutters. You got a little bit worried there because you if I remember correctly, you felt like you were being followed.
Yeah, it did. And it's funny when you watch the video back, because I did say on the camera, it feels like I'm being followed. And then literally about 3 seconds later, there was that noise.
Yeah.
And I can't remember why I thought I was being followed, whether I thought I'd heard a footstep or I just had that inkling. But I remember saying it, and then that happened. And in my mind, you think, because I was at the time convinced it was the shutter.
Yeah.
So you think, well, is it some sort of natural cooling down where something's just, when things expand and compress, and it might have just been like something like that. So I was convincing myself afterwards it was that. But then when you hear it back, like I said, it sounds like something's hit the floor, not the shutter. So I'm hearing what I heard and what was on the video are like 2 separate things. If I'd heard something that I thought had landed on the floor, I would have searched the area. I would have pointed the camera downwards. But for some reason, I didn't hear that. That was not what I heard when I was doing it in real time.
So before we move on to another location that you've done, what would be your conclusion of that shopping centre? Do you think that having a building of many, many hundreds of years ago standing there had some sort of effect or influence on the shopping mall? Or do you think the shopping mall itself had, its own resident ghosts?
I don't know. I'm still not totally sure on it, because if we believe things like the stone tape theory as a reason to explain why things are haunted, then you would say, well, all the stones of the castle were removed.
Yeah.
Although some of them were later used and built in streets nearby. I did mention there was a theatre on the site before the shopping centre. Well, there were shops before. Those shops were flattened and then the shopping centre was built. But before those shops, in the Victorian times, there was an old theatre, and that was supposedly haunted as well. It's hard to find stories because we're talking 150 years ago.
Yeah.
But there are references to a haunted theatre where kids used to look for tunnels beneath it because there were supposedly tunnels left over from the castle. And kids would go and try and find these tunnels beneath the stage or whatever. So to think that something's been on the land and has stayed on the land, it's an interesting thought, because I always think, well, scientifically, how would you back that up? Because obviously the next phase of that land is now going to become an open park. So does that mean that park is going to become haunted? It's going to be like a modern day steps and fountains and all sorts in it. So will that park now be haunted? If you believe that whatever's on that land has been haunted since, then in theory, yes, it will, because the theatre's been haunted, the shops have been haunted. It's interesting, but it's also interesting that this is a shopping centre that's right in the heart of a town as well. A lot of these modern ones are out on the outskirts, on industrial retail parks. But when you've got somewhere that's right in the middle of a town, then that's where it's always going to be built on something that's been there before.
Well, yes, very true. I kind of look at that. If I have to sort of visualize that in my head, how would that work? And I think of it like the pages of a book, where each page lies on another page, and as time goes on, the book gets thicker, so more pages are added, and every now and again, the book is in the wind and it's blowing around, and one page will open, and it might not be at present day. It might be at the beginning, or it might be halfway through, or it could be anywhere. And maybe that's what we're experiencing when we see, you go into the shopping mall and you see a little boy running around who's dressed in a ye olde clothes from the olden days. Maybe you are seeing just a playback. It's nothing. Yeah. It's not it's not conscious of you. It's not even a thing. It's just a shadow of the past. That's not to say that everything that people experience is a figment of their imagination, because clearly a lot of people out there experience a lot of things. Like yourself, you've experienced stuff that you clearly cannot explain. But maybe when you have areas like the shopping mall and places like that, where you've been built on places that have been have got a lot of history, and there's a lot of maybe emotional charge in that area, maybe it doesn't have to be the building. Maybe we talk about the stone tape and the or it's the crystalline quartz in the stone that's capturing the the essence, the vibrations, or whatever, however you want to explain it, like a tape recorder playing it back. And if you knock that building down and take those stones away hundreds of miles away, does that mean that the ghost of whoever is going to appear in wherever the building is that where it is now, wherever that might be?
The other counter argument to something like that, when you talk about a memory that replays itself out, is we're talking about a modern day shopping centre with floors that are brand new structure, new levels to it. Yet if an apparition appears on the top floor, then surely that must be able to, it's not a replay, because that's something that's able to get itself onto the top floor that didn't exist when this was a completely different layout of the land. How was it able to have manifested onto something that never existed, a level, building materials that never existed 500 years ago? And that was one of the reasons I was a bit skeptical of the children's story of things being seen upstairs. Because in my mind, I've always got to try and make it logical. And I think, is that believable? And that was something that I was a bit unsure about.
Yeah, it does make you think. You think if you saw something that was on a floor or on a level that was built, in recent years, and what you were seeing was maybe something that was maybe from a long time ago, hundreds of years ago, then yeah, how would that be able to manifest on something that was never there for them? Some people say, oh well, they're a ghost, and they would appear as if they were back in those days. They would see things as they were. Well, all they would be seeing is a castle, and the likelihood of the floor being in the same place as being built in the same place as an old castle floor. All right, mate. Chances are, you never know. But yeah, interesting concept. But I do think that when it comes to hauntings, not all, but a portion of them, I do think that the environment around us does play quite a large part in whatever it is manifesting. And I'm all right. I do sit on the fence with when I say ghosts and spirits. I do sit on the fence because I don't know what they are. I don't know if it's the ghost of your grandma or your granddad come back. I don't know. I don't know if it's the essence of a person that's lived on. I don't know. All I know is that a lot of people see stuff and they can't explain it. So I don't think it's hallucinations. And I also don't think that when people are in buildings and they see stuff that they're not imagining. I don't think they're imagining things. We can get things wrong. I've been in places and I think I've seen something. And then when I think about it, I think, maybe it wasn't. But we trick ourselves sometimes, We want to see something so bad that we see something without... It's like our brain is giving us some sort of thought fulfillment going, well, oh, God, there you go. There you go. There's your ghost. And then we kind of make a little story up. But I don't want to run away from this kind of topic, but I do want to move on to another location that you've investigated, and that is the Victorian police station. So that was How did you get access to that?
That was down in Sheffield. It's now open as a museum. So the whole thing is essentially preserved and has been reopened again as a museum. So that was the National Emergency Services Museum. If anyone in the Sheffield area wants to go along, highly recommend it. But again, it was just a case of getting permission to go in and being allowed to film. Obviously, a place like that had to have two of their members of staff had to be in the building at the time, but they never interfere with what you're doing. They just sit on the main reception area. But that is a fascinating building.
Did they tell you any ghost stories?
Yeah. And again, these go back to the similar type of stories that we were talking about. So these are full apparitions. So the main spirit that's said to haunt the police station area is to remember this building used to be two separate buildings. There was a police station and then the fire station. And it's kind of become one building now. And then the ambulances used to park in the little alleyway in between. So in the police station, it's meant to be haunted by what they say is a negative entity, who we presume is somebody who's died whilst being held in police custody. Apparently the name of that person was Cain, although nobody's been able to find any record of this person existing. But then the theory that they're going along with is that he's not telling you his real name. So they've said that apparently plenty of mediums have gone in, tried to get hold of the real name, been unsuccessful with it. So he's supposed to haunt one of the cells, although I went back down there a couple of weeks ago with a team to do a repeat investigation, and they told me that apparently he's been seen he's been felt in other parts of the museum as well. So he's kind of starting to travel a bit around the museum. So he's supposed to haunt the police cells, and they told me that when the museum was open a few years ago to the public, a lady came to reception complaining about another member of staff that was refusing to allow her to go into the fire station, which is basically all part of the museum, but all old Victorian era fire engines and everything like that still on display. And apparently she said that there's a man dressed in a fireman's uniform, old-fashioned fireman's uniform, standing in the doorway, but he's got his hand out. He's not letting anyone go past. So she went to make a complaint, saying, "Well, convinced it was a real person. So why can't we go in there? Your member of staff won't let us in." And they said, "Well, first of all, no member of staff here is dressed as a fireman. No member of the public's come in here dressed as a fireman." So they went and had a little look. There was nobody there. And so you can go in there if you want. And apparently that's a story that's been retold from the fire station. An ex-fireman came back quite a few years ago and started doing a painting upstairs in one of the museum exhibits. He said that a fireman walked into the room. He turned to look at them. He started talking to them. And apparently he got up out of politeness to go and stand closer to them so he could have a conversation, and they just faded away. These are stories that the staff passed on to me, so I don't know whether there's... I'm assuming, you rely that these are stories that have been passed on truthfully. They're interesting stories because they're full apparitions. But yeah, it's an interesting building. That it's even if you're just a kid and you want to go and see all the fire engines, or you want to go there because you want to learn a bit of history, that place has got it all.
Imagine that. Imagine being in a room, you're painting your picture, just chilling, and a guy comes in dressed as a fireman, and you start having a conversation with him, and you think, "Oh, yeah. I'm going to have a chat with him." You get up, you walk over to him, having a chat, and then he just vanishes. How does that? How do you wrap your head around that?
Yeah, it's... You try and think of it, if this is a true story, if you could rationalize it, you think, well, is this someone who maybe has poor eyesight, who's decided to get up and go and have a look because they've got short vision, or just can't see, and then maybe they haven't realized that person's left the area? You try and think, well, could it be that? I mean, it's a good ghost story. It's one of those where you like to think that's an interesting one. It certainly builds you up some hope when you're in there, because you think there's a fireman who manifests in this area. So that's some places you go into and you speak to the staff and they'll just say, "Oh, well, I've worked here for 15 years and I've never seen anything." And some people pick up on this, and it's always like they pick up on that. But when you get stories of apparitions, it's apparitions for me that are what you really want to catch, because you get a lot of stuff through the equipment, through gadgets and things like that. But if you can get that apparition, that's kind of like the thing you're there for, isn't it? You want to see it. I read an article recently online. Do people even see ghosts anymore? Because so many people are putting paranormal experiences to so many other things, that those classic stories of, "Well, I was just locking up late at night and just turned around and there was an old Victorian era woman stood there." You don't get those stories anymore. They're becoming rarer. But I love them. That for me is what you want to go and see. You want that apparition.
Yeah, that kind of classic ghost story. Yeah, where the person sort of sees that kind of archetypal kind of ghost that from ghost lore, and that all that goes from where those stories came from and stuff like that. Yeah, it's all about gadgets these days. It's all about meters and readings and noises and beeping and stuff. And if you've got a ball on the floor that's doing a little bit of a beep and stuff, it's like, well, clearly that's a spirit. Well, no, I don't know what it is. What? How do you know? You're just. Yeah. I think that we are becoming a little bit lazy when it comes to. Some people would argue and say, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about, because these things help us investigate. And that's true. And that's a valid point. That anything that makes your investigation more in depth and more easier and can help gather evidence is good. But unfortunately, a lot of people use these, some things I would consider toys, in the wrong way. And they do the kind of the shotgun effect, where they just throw it out there, and whatever happens is clearly a demon or a spirit or whatever. and it's they've got to have a little bit, just a little sprinkle of science here and there, a little bit, just a little bit of skepticism here and there. You got to mix it in a bit, because that's what makes it a good investigation. If you can have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, not just do one thing and go, well, clearly it's that. And what I was going to say to you, I do know that you use these kind of gadgets and electrical devices. How do you kind of work that into your investigation, and how much do you rely on them?
If I'm honest, I would like to rely as little as possible on them. I think if you go back to like the very early ones we did, especially on the radio, when we used to do the old radio shows, we never used them. It was always eyes and ears. But then you start to realize when the times have changed, people want to see those things get used. If you just sat in a room and you sat there for 3 or 4 hours and you got absolutely nothing, you realize that it would be very hard to please other people. And so I always try and balance it out. I'll always have a section of the video where I am literally doing that, where I am just calling out, seeing what I get. I'll then try and mix in a bit of using something else, just so it's a bit of a mixture of a bit of everything. Because you're never going to keep everyone happy. If you don't use them, you'll always get people who will say, well, you need to use this to try and communicate, or you need to do that. And if you use one more than the other, people will say, well, that's a lot of rubbish. So I always try and have a bit of everything. So the first part of an investigation will usually be just trying to see a bit of what's in the atmosphere, just seeing what I can capture with a microphone and a camera. But it is hard to please, especially a modern day audience. But yeah, like I say, trying to be as scientific as possible. So I know a lot of people wouldn't do it, but they'll put their phones on flight mode. So that obviously interferes with a lot of things, and just checking the surroundings, that nothing's going to interfere with anything really.
I was going to say, back in the day, in many moons ago, when this whole ghost stuff started taking off, and we were, we had it on telly, and we had Most Haunted. Remember that show? Oh,
yeah.
I religiously watched that show for maybe the first season, and I gotta admit, I did enjoy it a little bit. Before Yvette started and Derek started running around everywhere and screaming in the dark. But I think it did change and it did evolve. I don't think for the better, but that's just my opinion for what it's worth. And if you enjoyed the show and you still enjoy it, that's great, because I know they're still going and they're still doing their things, and more power to them. But the fact is that something happened, and not just with Most Haunted, but with Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures and other shows of that ilk. Usually the first season is really good, and they go out and they do their investigating, and I don't think it's their fault. I really don't think it's their fault, because they've got a production company behind them saying, you need to make things happen because you need to find stuff, because we've got advertisers and we need to pay wages and we need to pay the bills. And I kind of see it from that point of view. But as investigators, you're running a fine line. For example, I'm a producer and I'm putting money into Dead Air, and I'm saying to you, okay, Rob, you got some venues, we're going to send a camera crew with you, and you're going to do your investigations, but I need you to ham it up a bit. I need you to sort of go, any little noise, I want you to ham it up. Don't say it's a ghost, but I want you to, make it exciting. And we're going to edit in such a way, we're going to do lots of cuts and quick cuts and stuff, because the audience, we've got to keep that audience on the edge of their seat. And I think that's what's happened to a lot of these TV ghost shows, is they've hit the second season or the third season, and they realise that they're up against a wall. The audience wants stuff to happen. They're tuning in every week because they want to see the ghost. They want to see the chair fly across the room. You know, they want it, and they fall into that trap where they feel that they have to not overact stuff, but they have to give something every week. And I think that when you bring in these like devices that Ovilus and all those sort of things, do you feel that kind of was the beginning of the end for these kind of ghost TV shows?
Yeah, the Ovilus, those kind of things they're odd, because I always think if something is able to manipulate them, whoever invented the actual device would need to also be aware of how a ghost could use it. Like the Ovilus, that was it Ghost Adventures, wasn't it? That was Bill Chappell did all that. And then you think, well, if you were a Victorian child, you're not going to know how to edit something or manipulate something that's programmed into a circuit board.
That's interesting. You bring up a really interesting point there. Right, my name is Little Bobby, and I come from the 13th century, and I'm all blinky blonky blimey. How's your father and all that? Yeah, that's me. I can't read all right. I'm a bit illiterate, but I have fun, and I'm a little bit of a pickpocket. I'm a little bit of a scallywag, right? Mm-hmm. And I died of a rat bite or something, and I died young, and I became a scallywag Victorian whatever ghost boy. So, and I haunt a certain area of the town or whatever. Now, if someone comes along with this device and they go, and I've got this device in my hand, can you talk into it? It's a thing. I'm a little scallywag boy, and I don't know what that is. To me, it's just a brick. I don't understand what you're on about. I always wonder, when if you are conversing with a personality or a consciousness, and that consciousness is locked into a certain era in history, and you're in the room going, it's, talking to my camera, and they're like, what's he on about? And it takes me back to the late great Peter Underwood, and he was investigating a manor house which had allegedly had poltergeist-like phenomenon. So they set up a time-lapse camera on the stairway where allegedly this phenomenon was happening on the landing. I'm going from memory here, so I might be way off, but the basics is correct. So they had the camera on time lapse because they were trying to capture whatever was making the sounds, and they also had a recorder going. And when they heard some stuff, but they didn't capture anything on camera. I don't remember. But what they did capture was when they played the tape back, they caught two people having a conversation, and one of them was saying, they were saying, look, do you see the thing? Obviously the camera, and somebody, I'm paraphrasing here, but like they said, yes, it's looking at us. So they were, whatever it was that imprinted on that tape, was aware that something, they didn't know what it was, but they aware that something was, trying to either view them, see them, or whatever. So I find that fascinating, but I always find it fascinating that if you are a consciousness and you lived in a certain era, would you be locked into that era? Would you be like, only able to understand stuff from that time period? So when you view stuff from another time period, say you're a ghost and you're 500 years old in ghost years, or in dead years, or however you measure it. Would you be like, oh yeah, I know what that is. That's the ball. That's the thing. I'll light it. I don't know what you're on about. What's electric? What are you talking about? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think obviously the counter argument to that would be that if something's intelligent, it would also be able to learn as well. So if it can communicate with you, it's obviously got an intelligence. Can it learn what a camera is? Does it learn these things as more and more paranormal teams come into a venue? It starts to see, well, that's that thing that the last people that came in here. But then the other thing is that, again, it's a similar sort of subject to that would be language, because I watched something recently about how far back in time we would be able to go before we would stop being able to have a conversation with someone. And I think it wasn't as far back as what you would think. You're talking about 300-400 years before
Old English,
the English language. Yeah. If you went back to certainly the 1600s, having a conversation with somebody, an intelligent conversation would be like speaking to someone who was foreign, because they use different words, different dialect, different ways of talking. So then you think, if I'm in a manor house or I'm in somewhere and I'm trying to speak to someone who died in 14 whatever, would they be able to understand even if I'm just having a conversation with them? It's an interesting one. If I believe if they're intelligent, if there's an intelligent entity there that can interact with you, then I think it can learn. But if it's a memory, then I think obviously it wouldn't matter if you're talking to it or not, because it doesn't know you're there. But I think if it's got an intelligence, it will be able to learn things and observe things.
So would that be the same for EVP? So if you went to, say you went to an old prisoner of war camp, and say there had been accounts of maybe German soldiers being seen, or people in, German uniforms, because say it was in England and it was a prisoner of war camp, and, I think you went to one a while back, and you're asking questions. I know a lot of Europeans speak perfectly good English, and even back then in the World War II, their English was fine, but maybe they didn't. Maybe they were just proper, full-on, only speaking their own native tongue.
Yeah.
When they died, and if you're asking questions in English, if you get a response, would it not be in German? Would it, if it was English, where would that be coming from? Or are they? What's your thoughts on that?
It kind of brings me on to this Halloween, because the videos that I'm putting out this Halloween, I went across to Norway.
Yeah.
And I've done videos abroad before, and I think I was in Iceland. I'd done a video, and somebody had commented underneath saying, "Well, why are you asking questions in English?" And that comment stuck with me, and I thought, well, that's a good point. So I went across to Norway in the summer to record this year's Halloween. The location I got is an absolute amazing. It's one of the biggest places I've ever done. How I got that for free, I'll never know. But I did use a translation app, so I did have set questions. I introduced myself in Norwegian, asked a few questions in Norwegian, and this is the interesting thing. This is where, for me, this is possibly the best piece of evidence potentially I've ever captured. So I don't know if you know this, but in Norway, they've switched off analog radio.
All right.
So there's no FM, there's no medium wave. Everything over there is now digital, as in DAB radio.
Yeah.
Which essentially means that a spirit box over there, those things that sweep through,
there should be nothing on it. There should be no signal on it at all. It just should be white noise. That's it.
Yeah.
Different frequencies of white noise, yeah?
Exactly. So I'd been talking to a Norwegian paranormal team before I went, and I was asking them, I said, so is there any point in bringing a spirit box, or is this thing just going to be dead in my hand? Will I get white noise? What will I, because I had no idea. I didn't even know if I was going to switch this thing on and it'd just be silent. Does the white noise go off when the transmit? I had no idea what to expect. And they said, well, no, you'll still get the white noise, so it'll still scan and it'll still sweep, but you just won't get any radio bleed at all because there's no radio stations here anymore. So I was in there literally very early in the night as well, sweeping the spirit box. And I don't know if you ever used one, but you kind of learn it as it does a full rotation of the band. You kind of remember when it picks up a radio frequency, that radio frequency comes back around again, and you start to learn that there maybe is one or two radio stations playing music, and you hear like a split second of it. But there was just constant white noise, sweeping white noise. And I was in this building that was used as a mortuary, an old hillside fort, massive place, thousands of deaths on this site. You'll see the video when it comes out.
Yeah.
Just layer up and layer of history. We're talking Northern Wars, Norway, fighting Sweden, all the way up until World War II. Then the Nazis took it over and used it as a prison to torture people. This fortress has got everything in it. And I'm just sat in this room, sweeping away, nothing. I must have had it on for about 15 minutes. And by now, my attention span is just completely gone. And within the space of about 20, I think it'll be under 20 seconds, I got two different voices. One's going to be a male voice, and the other one's a female voice. And like I say, I'd asked the questions translated into Norwegian via an app. I've since sent that footage to a Norwegian who's amplified it, listened to it, and recognizes that it's speaking in perfect Norwegian, even though there's no Norwegian radio stations out there anymore.
So that would say that it might not... I mean, because radio signals can travel hundreds and if not thousands of miles. So if it's speaking in Norwegian, there's no way that anything could have bled over onto those frequencies. It couldn't be like a ham radio or somebody on...
Yeah.
Could it be that, or was? Now I don't want you to give away any spoilers, because obviously this is this video hasn't been published yet, and all the juicy stuff. You want to keep that, but I'm just wondering, playing devil's advocate, if it could be somebody that's on a ham radio or something like that. But if the voices are specific to what you're investigating, that kind of changes, the whole thing. I mean, what would be great if it said your name, or it told you, if it answered in a way that you know what's 2 and 2, and it come back 4, then you're getting somewhere.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
The location we were in is very close to the border with Sweden. And when I say close to the border, I mean 200 meters, 300 meters from the border with Sweden. It was literally a fort overlooking the two countries were at war. So I asked the team, the lady that sat and listened to all this footage, I said, is this potentially Swedish? Because she speaks a bit of Swedish as well. She said, no, this is Norwegian. She said there is the possibility that someone's got a pirate radio somewhere, but the point of it being that nobody listens to FM anymore. So I don't know. But she's translated 2 of these phrases, and they kind of, one of them's a date, which could be relevant, and the other one is also very relevant to the type of building that we were in. Now, I obviously don't know Norwegian at all, so I can only trust what she's saying as she can hear the words, and she can say, well, that sounds like it's saying this, and it sounds like it's saying that. So I take her word for it. But I also, when I sent her the foot, she didn't know the questions that I asked as well. So that's where it's going to become interesting, because she's only heard the EVP. She's only heard the actual spirit box that's sweeped. She hasn't heard the questions that I've translated. So it would be interesting. And obviously, I'm going to line it up. So she'll say what she thinks it said, and then I'll say, well, this is the question that I asked. Does that match? So I've already spoken to her a few times over Facebook. I'm just literally waiting for her now to come on Zoom and repeat all that onto a video, so I can have it in my video rather than just having to dictate it. But that's almost finished. That's ideally the video that's going out for Halloween. That for me is, if that place was in the UK, that would be every ghost hunter would be getting into there, or trying to get into there. This location is unbelievable. Funny enough, it wasn't the place I was trying to get to. That fell through, and this was kind of a plan B that was a backup. But what we got was, in my opinion, like, I'll never get into a place bigger than this again. It was unbelievable.
So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm sure listeners are going to be looking forward to that. I'll make sure that I tag that in my socials when it goes live. As we're getting to the end of this episode, it's an hour is flying by, but I was going to ask you, out of all this year with your investigations this year, what for you has been the most memorable?
Apart from Norway,
apart from Norway.
That's the one that for me is, I'm going to be buzzing over that one for years. Shrewsbury Prison, or HMP Shrewsbury, whatever it calls itself now. That's an incredible place. I don't know if it's haunted. You hear little taps and bangs. I wasn't sure if I've debunked one of the legends of a certain cell. You're meant to see a figure walking out, and I wasn't sure because I thought I saw it, and I had to I think I showed it in the video of like the shadow of one of the railings on the steps going up to that level where the cells were. Have I debunked that, of people seeing that shadow at the corner of their eye? I don't know. That was an incredible one. And places I've been to that haven't gone out yet. So been up to Scotland. Got a few places in Scotland coming. That's going to be later in the year. Incredible places up there. And I'm about to go in a few days' time to redo a very old location that I've done in the past. The video was horrific because it was one of the early videos I did. So it was kind of, when I watch it back now, you hand over the eyes kind of thing. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it again, do it properly, do it the way I would do it now. Can't wait to get back up there and record that one.
I do remember, this is a side note, I do remember you did a video in I think it was a social club or an old like bar or private club or something like that, which hadn't been used for a long time, and you did an episode in this place, and it was all closed up. You were the only one in there, and you were hearing all these like did you say, like knocking and taps and stuff. I remember that video. That was quite a creepy video, and that was, I think that was a number of years ago, but it was I can't remember what it was. It was like a club. Yeah, it was like a drinking club.
Yeah, I would never get back in there now. I only got that because after we went into lockdown and we came out of lockdown, there was still that time where nothing was allowed to open. But a lot of places were getting a budget to be able to invest in sort of do up their bars and pubs again. And I just got in touch with the owner of the place, and they just said, yeah, come down. So obviously now it's a nightclub now. So going there at night now, it's just going to be next to impossible. But yeah, that was a one-off chance I got. An old historic place. It used to be an old prison. Now it's a nightclub. So yeah.
Creepy. That was just a creepy video. I remember watching that one, and I thought, and it wasn't a very big place, but it was just creepy.
You know what? Like the lady who, it's her husband and wife that own it. She sent me a screenshot from that afterwards, and I hadn't mentioned it because the video went out there, and there's the little back room where they keep all the drinks, like the bottles, behind the bar. That used to be the old mortuary, an old morgue. When someone in the prison died, that's where they would take the body. And she said, have you seen this? And she sent me a screenshot, and I think it's just completely pareidolia. So there's obviously a lot of water on the floor, a lot of moisture on the floor.
Yeah.
But it looks like the face of William Shakespeare on the floor, like as a pattern on the floor. And she sent me it, and I was like, I can't believe I didn't see that. I spent hours editing this, and obviously the video's gone out, so I can't mention it in the video. But she sent me the screenshot, And I was like, that's unreal. Now I can see it. I can't unsee it, but it looks like a face
Yeah.
in the. I know you get these face people who will draw circles around faces in like bushes and things like that, and I'm not interested in that. But when you see this one, it was kind of like, you see the eyes, the ears, the side of the face. It's three. It looks like the shaded side of the face. So it looks 3D. It looked like a genuine face, and yeah, I can't believe that just went totally unnoticed when I was
I
piecing it all
had
together.
I had an experience like that many years ago, 20 odd years ago, and I went to a friend's funeral, and he asked me to. His mother asked me to photograph the funeral, so I did some pictures for as a bit, just so she had a memento. And I remember leaving after the ceremony was over. I remember leaving, and I got back to my studio where I was based at the time, and I was outside. Back in those days, I was a smoker, and I was outside because I didn't smoke in my studio. I was like outside in like the walkway, we had this little garden area, and I was having a cigarette, and I looked up in the sky, and I saw what I could only describe as a face made of clouds. The clouds were in a certain way. They looked like a silhouette of someone's, side on of their face. And I looked and I thought, wow, that looks like a face.
Yeah,
And it was like, is my brain telling me what to see, or is the clouds making a face? It's it's that interpretation. And I know what you mean there when people see things like they'll see in the fire, they'll see a person's face, or they take a screen capture of someone or something, and it does look like a face, or in shadow or whatever. And yeah, I mean, is it the brain that's tricking us, or is it really there? Who knows? I don't.
yeah. I'll send you it across later, and I'll let you have a look at it.
Yeah,
So,
don't tell me where to look. Just send me it, and I'll see if I can go. Oh, look, that looks like that geezer that used to do a lot of writing. But but anyway, so what have you got planned after Halloween? Into like, can you believe it? It's nearly the end of the year. Can you believe it? And in a little while, it's going to be 2024. So
yeah,
I mean, we're trying to, as we were talking a few nights ago, of getting some sort of ghost hunting thing going. I would love for you and Rob from How Haunted, Rob Kirk, to come on an investigation. Maybe get Kevin from We Need to Talk About Ghosts, and maybe a couple of other people. Get Tom along from Shrouded Hand, and do some sort of group investigation over a long weekend. That would be absolutely amazing. But as we were saying, everywhere is just bonkers money right now.
I know that's it. It's back in the day when we used to do the radio show. We could just drop a message or even just ring places up a week before, and we were just walked in. And now everywhere, and I think it's a lot of the fact that it's a very commercial business. So a lot of paranormal groups will pay hundreds to hire places out, so nobody wants to then give it out for free. But I say, when I was in Norway, I just got the keys to this place, like a massive hillside fortress, and you think you're going to get these big, huge metal keys, and you just get tiny little, your normal car key size things, but it's totally different. And over there, there's a paranormal group that I think they were in there 2 weeks ago. They go there every month or two, and it's like they just ask and they get in.
That's
They
what
don't
you
have to
need.
pay.
You need buildings where there's some phenomenon going on, and you can go there regularly and build up a timeline of what people are experiencing, and also leave equipment there where you can remotely view and also remotely measure what's going on in that environment when people aren't there, to see if there's any difference in stuff. Unfortunately, places like over here, Chingle Hall, an amazing place with an amazing history, and I was in a conversation, albeit a very short conversation, on social media in a group that I'm a member of regarding Chingle Hall, and somebody chimed in and said, I know the owners to Chingle Hall, the current owners, and they don't allow ghost investigations. Well, we know that, but someone was asking, can we go to Chingle Hall and do an overnight? They chimed in and said, no, you can't. I personally know the owners. So I asked them, I said, politely, I said, have the owners ever experienced anything untoward since they've lived there? And they've lived there a number of years now. And she wrote back and said, no, they've not had any paranormal weirdness there. Now, I don't know what to believe there, because, if you're a hardened skeptic and stuff's going on, you might just brush it aside and go, that was my imagination. That chair moving, I imagine that. You might give yourself an excuse for it not to be something other than your imagination. So I really would like to be a fly on the wall in a place like that.
Yeah.
With people that maybe don't think it's a lot of old nonsense.
I got a rejection from a venue start of the year, because I know you've done a piece about the UFO that was seen in Gateshead during the war.
Yeah.
The Benjamin.
Yes.
The man who lived in Benjamin.
Yeah.
Well, literally across the road from there, there's a place called Benjamin Grove. And now this place, it's an old manor house basically, but it's been there since it was just all fields. And now obviously there's a town expanded there called Benjamin, but this was just all farm fields. So families lived there for hundreds of years. And the interesting thing about it was they were all Quakers, and the daughters and the whole family made a pact where they said, this is the family home. When we all die, we're all going to come back. And sure enough, people have seen Grey Lady on the stairs. I think it was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle stayed there. He came in because the family were, well known in the area.
Yeah.
And he got them into seances because he was really big into that kind of thing. And the daughters became obsessed with doing old Victorian seances. So you can hire it out as a team, and you can still do seances in the room where family did it. And I've asked them, I would, even hire it out myself.
Yeah.
Obviously not for a full night, but just for a couple of hours just to film in there. And I got the most stupid, in my opinion, the most stupid rejection reason for doing it. And it was because, and you can tell that they're not paranormal minded people. But she said, but if you go and put all that on the internet, then nobody will come here because they know everything. And I thought,
what?
Because I couldn't get my head around it, and I was taken aback because I'd gone into this place in person to speak to them rather than firing emails back across, and I was trying to say, well, it doesn't work like that. It's the opposite. Like the reason people go on these and pay money to go on these things is because they've seen it on TV.
Yeah.
They've seen, you see a lot of venues suddenly hike their prices up because Most Haunted have been in there or whatever.
Oh yeah.
It's like these buildings that they're once a TV show is filmed in there, their status goes up. It's like it's kind of like social media, like influencers. Someone shows you a product or something, and everyone wants to go and buy it. And it's like that. If I went and made content from this place and told the ghost story of how incredible that this family made a pact that they were all going to come back in the afterlife, and people are still seeing them, that for me is like that's content. You can get into there and tell the story properly of who these people were. And she was just like, yeah, but we don't want everything on the internet because then it'll stop people coming. They already know the story then. And she just wasn't getting it.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it's worth waiting until maybe like somebody else takes over running the place and then trying again. But
I would.
I was just
I would wait.
Couldn't get my head around it. Yeah. It was
I think who you're talking to just doesn't kind of fully understand what you're trying to convey to them. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that have already made their minds up. I always tend to sort of try and be open-minded, and I always tend to sort of be a bit on the fence as well, because you can't just blindly say, this is that or whatever. You have to be a little bit skeptical, just a little bit. But when you try to get into a place and you get a rejection like that, and it doesn't make sense, you just think, what are you? Who wrote that? What's in your head? So but there are a lot of venues out there, and there's a lot of interesting venues. But unfortunately, in today's climate, you're either going to pay a lot of money to get into a place. I mean, there are places like National Trust buildings that you can hire for a weekend, but and they're like 15th, 14th century, and you think, oh my god, the history in that place. Imagine just staying in there for a weekend and just lock yourself away for a weekend and just do your EVPs and just wander around and seeing what you what you experience. There's a place here, at Woodspring Priory, it's called. It's an old priory from the olden days, and you can hire it. You can hire it out for it's like a holiday home, and it's got its own chapel. It's hundreds of years old. It's got loads of history. It's only a few miles away from me, but they want serious money to hire it. They want, and the only way to do it is to do it with a group of people. Is to have 4 or 5 people, 6 people come in, and the only problem then is you've all got to be on the same page. You've all got to be like-minded, and you've all got to be respectful that everyone in your team, in the team of people, is trying to do something in their own way. Like maybe they're a podcaster, maybe they're an investigator. They all need their little bit of space. So you don't want to be on top of one another, and that's the only problem when you've got large groups of people and you go on these organised ghost hunts. It's it's fun. You can't take any of that seriously because there's too many people there. It's just too much going on,
Exactly. Yeah. You mentioned National Trust. There's a I don't know if you remember very early on in Most Haunted when they did Susa Lighthouse. That's National Trust. Now they used to allow paranormal teams in.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it stopped, whether they had a bad experience or they just said, right, we don't want to do that anymore. But I did do it years ago as with the team, but obviously not like how I would have done it now. And now you can hire out. You can go on the National Trust website. You can book.
Yeah.
Several. Or I think you can. I think it's 4 nights. You've got to do it. One of the cottages that's part of the lighthouse. So that you've got the lighthouse, the big tall bit.
Uh-huh.
You've got obviously the working rooms around it, and then you've got the lighthouse keeper's cottage, and you can hire that cottage. Now it's the lighthouse keeper, the former lighthouse keeper, that's meant to haunt the lighthouse. So I was looking into it, thinking, well, would that work? Could I go there? But you can only stay for a minimum of 4 nights, and I think it was going to come to well over £1,000 to hire this cottage out. And I thought, if you could get it for 1 night and you can get it for a decent price, you could, even if you didn't get into the lighthouse, you could just do the cottage where the lighthouse keeper lived.
Yeah,
that for me would be enough. But it's just,
I looked at one place when we were talking about it before the summer. I was looking at a few venues. I found one which was owned and run by the National Trust. It was a 15th century manor house up the country a little bit, but I was looking for somewhere that we could all travel to, which was reasonably local, and it was 4 bedrooms or 6 bedrooms or something like that. It had a lot of history, and I think it was a minimum of 3 nights stay. You had to block book for, I think it was 3 or 4 nights. So it would have been ideal because it would have been a long weekend, like a Friday to a Monday. But when you tied it all up, it came to, I think it was just under or just over £1,200, and it's like, wow, that's a chunk of money each before anyone is booked any travel tickets or anything, Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I'm looking at places when I'm going away now. So I like to get abroad and obviously for non-paranormal reasons as well, go sightseeing
Yeah.
and things like that. But I find it's a lot easier to get into places in Europe now than what it is in the UK. One of the ones that's on my bucket list, and it's been on my bucket list for as long as I've been interested in the paranormal, and that's the Plague Island, Prevalia in Venice.
Oh yeah, that's didn't
Um,
Ghost Adventures go there and do a episode?
they did. They left half their equipment there
Yeah,
as well,
they
apparently.
they had some real weird stuff going on, didn't they?
Well, Alan Robson, he's been 3 times. So he's done it twice as a radio show, and he did it once with Sky on Scariest Places on Earth. Because they took an American family there. This was before the whole thing's it's completely dilapidated now. It's getting worse and worse every year. So I'd said, I think it was about 2020, I said, when everything opens up again, I'm going to go to Venice and I'm going to do it. And if it's for whatever reason, it's never gone through. But I've been speaking via Facebook with a Croatian urbexer, and he's done urbexing videos on the island, obviously non-paranormal, and he's given me the contact details of the person that I would need to speak to get a boat onto the island, because it's forbidden to go there, which is another iffy thing. If you get caught on there, you can be in trouble with the police. But a lot of them say there's a time where the police boat in the lagoon goes.
Yeah.
That's when you get onto it, and that's when you go. It's obviously the number one place in the world I would love to go. It's supposed to be the most haunted place on earth, and yeah, that's always been my ambition to go.
I know when Ghost Adventures did it, they were very unsettled, and as you say, they left their gear. Well, part of their gear they left there. They just wanted to get off and just leave, but they were stuck there, weren't they? Because their boat had dropped them off, and it was only coming back at a certain time. And also, Haunted Earth. Can't remember his name. He had a YouTube channel, and he did a lot of investigating. He went there as well. I don't think he does haunted stuff anymore. He's Chris. What's his last name? His name's Chris. I'm trying to think of his last name. He's an English guy, and he used to do a lot of ghost videos and investigations. And he did an episode there on that island, and he had stuff happen to him as well. So yeah, maybe there's something to it. Maybe it is that maybe there is more of a reason. I mean, I always think that they want to keep people off of there because it is quite dilapidated. A lot of the buildings are now falling to pieces, and it is incredibly overgrown. And you could literally fall down a gully or a ditch and not even know it was there, and you could be stuck there on your own. You could die there. You could be one would know you're there. So I can understand the authorities not wanting people to put themselves in danger like that. But I think if you did go there with other people and had contacts and people knew where you were, I mean, I don't see why not. But horses for courses, really, isn't it? I mean, it's one of those things. I don't know if I would feel comfortable going there, but especially on your own. I mean, I don't think it's somewhere you could do on your own, really. I mean, it'd be a bit too dangerous.
I think the only thing that really I would be unsure about, apparently it's got an infestation of scorpions on it. People that have been there said that you see them all over the place. And I think in the dark, I would be a bit sort of like, I'm not sure about that. But take a UV light or something.
That's. I think we're gonna end this episode on the scorpions. I think leave that into people's heads. But what are you going to be doing? So in 2024, you're going to be trying to do stuff like that, are you, or have you got a plan?
I've got a few places. I'd love to go to Romania, because just the whole Transylvania. My sister went last year. She loved it. Obviously not for the paranormal reasons, but getting out into Transylvania, those places are incredible. So I might look at doing something over there. I'm always looking for when I'm traveling, just to see. There's a paranormal group in Malta, actually, that I've been speaking to. It's the same as when you go other places. They've got access to a lot of these places. They just ask and they get the keys and they go into them. And so I'm going to try and team up maybe with a Maltese group, because there's some really old fortresses over there. Love to go over there for a week or two. But in terms of this country, just try and find more venues. I'm getting crossing more off the list now, so I'm trying to find new places. So if anyone's got any suggestions or knows any way into some places, then I'll definitely be interested in finding out where those could be.
Sounds good. Well, yeah, if anybody's got any sort of places, yeah, either drop me a message, or Rob's details will be with this podcast. So you'll be able to get to his website and his contact details, and you can let him know. But that will be interesting to see if anyone's got on anywhere that's a little bit spooky, so to say. But anyway, so thanks for coming on, Rob. Thanks for coming on this episode. I'm sure you'll be back again, because it's good to catch up with you every few months and see what you've been up to. I'm also looking forward to, hopefully we can work something out where we get together and do a little bit of a ghost hunt or something in the near future. Again, we can get a little team of us together. That would be quite cool. I don't know how we'd work it out, but I'm sure there's a way around it. I'd like to thank everybody for sticking with us and listening to my inane waffling, because I do tend to go off on tangents. But it is what it is. It's freewheeling. I don't like to have, when I have a guest, I don't like to have too much of a script. I like to see where it goes. Thanks to everybody for your support and your likes, and even I got some donations, which was very nice, and that was thank you very much. You knew who you are, so that's going to be put to good use. That all helps. Every penny helps, as Rob knows, because he's a bit of a jet setter with the ghosts and stuff. He's off to Europe next year. Any final words, Rob?
Just hope everyone enjoys the content. If you've never seen it before, just go onto the Dead Air channel, enjoy it, and like I say, there'll always be new content on the way. Awesome.
Yep, links will be in the description to Rob's YouTube channel. And yes, I highly advise anybody that likes that kind of first-person ghost hunting stuff, get on his channel and watch his videos, because they are kind of creepy. I've been spooked many a time watching his videos. But until next episode, thank you again, Rob, for joining me on this episode. And thanks everyone for listening. You're welcome. Speak to you soon.